Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Good news, everyone. We are here discussing Futurama, the revived series here, Season 11, Episode 1, entitled The Impossible Stream, the premiere of the Hulu age of the show. Now, there will be some spoilers ahead. However, I don't anticipate going into all sorts of depths like I do with my other reviews, since for two reasons here. It's a shorter show, and it's a comedy show, so a lot of the plot details don't necessarily have that much import. It's more of an experience. It's more of a visual and auditory sensation, I suppose you could say. So a little backstory here. I do enjoy Futurama. I've been watching it since it first came out way back on Fox back in the day. I've been following it along ever since. Obviously, there's been ebbs and flows, and this is going to be the first time I've really had a chance to discuss this show with new live episodes, which is kind of exciting. So how do I feel the series ended before they brought it back? I think the last series finale they had, because they've had more than their share over the course of the years, the last series finale probably was the best. Now, maybe the first series finale felt the best to some people, but I think they really ended things well with the last one. So they're going to have a lot to come back from here, because they kind of bookended the series in a nice way, in my opinion. But they do 100% address where they left things, and they pick up from there with a time jump. So it's kind of an interesting time jump, and it's not really that well explored in this episode. We don't really get a sense of how the rest of the world is at this point, or the rest of the universe, I should say. But our characters were frozen in time. Specifically, Fry and Leela were in that kind of unfrozen state, kind of traveling the world, getting their relationship growing old. They've now been rescued by the Professor, and they're coming back to 3023. So they have kept along in current time 1,000 years from us in the show, and that's going to provide a lot of interesting details. Now, I'm not entirely sure, because it looked like the rest of the world was frozen, but I have to imagine it wasn't, because things have evolved and moved on in technology, and blah, 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 has increased and kind of caught up to the 1,000 years from us equivalent, so they can do things like riff on Hulu, which this episode is. This episode, kind of similar to when they came back before, was primarily playing on that coming back from the dead trope. This episode did it way, way, way more explicitly and throughout the entire episode by making the entire plot line sort of kind of settled around the reboot of All My Circuits, or the revival. I keep saying the word reboot, and they keep saying the word reboot, and everyone keeps saying the word reboot. This is not a reboot. There is nothing changed, or there is no new cast being brought in to reimagine an old thing. This is simply picking up where we left off, so it's more of a revival than anything. Now, did the show land for me? I know it was a sticking point a while back that they weren't necessarily bringing back all of the voice cast, and then they got together and kind of lobbied for them to bring everyone back. So we do have our core cast back. All the voice actors are in place, at least for our main cast. We haven't seen too many side characters outside of Calculon, Scruffy, and people like that. But I do think, and this may just be the nitpicker in me, it's been 23 years since the show started. Some of these voice actors have clearly aged, and you could hear that in their voices. Maybe they'll get back into the groove of things. This is, like I said, the first episode, but you can definitely hear in the voices a few times they've slowed down a little. There's a little nuance to their voice that's different, and that's to be expected. I'm not going to ding it for that. These people are what they are. These people are the age that they are. Their voices change. Our voices change as we grow. I just wanted to acknowledge that, because it did stand out to me, and I generally thought there were some interesting concepts in this episode, but I wouldn't necessarily say it did a fantastic job or it was the best thing ever. I don't even know if I want to say this is the best premiere episode of one of their comebacks. It did have a huge hurdle to clear, so I'm hoping going forward a lot of the episodes feel fresher and feel more fun. This one was kind of just trying to get that ball rolling again and move things along from the last episode, establish the new status quo and things like that. For that purpose, I suppose it worked very well, but I just found a lot of the humor and a lot of the jokes to be not that impressive, or not up to that A level the show used to be. Sure, there were some good laughs, there was some really good premises, some really good callbacks, inside jokes, just little details you might not necessarily catch, but a lot of the overt jokes, the overt storyline was just fairly simple, and in a few places it felt a little stiff and a little stilted to me. And I know that could just be me coming back from, nostalgia goggles or whatever, but I have to imagine I'm not the only one that felt that way. I'm not going out on a limb here and saying this was terrible and I would never, watch this again. I do still have hope for the upcoming season. I just think this isn't necessarily the strongest start, and hopefully going forward everything kind of gets that ball rolling and things feel better. I know I haven't really touched on the plot, so I'll go through a brief rundown here. It's basically what I said before. They're being unlocked from their frozen temporal state, and they're dealing with a new world. Fry has realized he's been in the future for 23 years now, so he wants to go out and achieve something. His goal in life is now to watch every television show that's ever been made. Obviously, this is where the parallel comes in for them being rebooted on a streaming service, because the last show that he isn't capable of finishing is All My Circuits, but because he gets caught in this altered brain state, if he stops watching television, he'll die because his brain is synced up to the streaming service, so they have to go out and produce more episodes of the show. That allows us to get Calculon back, because as you recall, in the last season, he died and went to robot hell, and the devil was sick of him, so he shot him back up to the surface in order to trod the boards once more, and that was the main storyline. They have this whole subplot of going to Fulu, which is their Hulu equivalent, and this is where a lot of things are very on the nose. There's a lot of very meta references that aren't necessarily the most well thought out and the most ingenious, in my opinion. There was one scene that really stuck out, and this probably wasn't intended at the point, but there's a whole writer's room scene where they're calling the writers lazy and they passed out from trying to generate all this stuff. I know they weren't being serious there, and I know that they weren't actually saying bad things about the writers, but it just came off like, ooh, we're right in the midst of this writer's strike. That's probably, I don't know if it's prescient or poor timing or what, but it just really stood out, probably more than they intended it to when they made this episode. So I think overall, the plot of this was fine. There was some good jokes, there was some good humor, but I don't think it really stood out. It didn't do anything overtly special, and it didn't come out of the gate running like I really, really hoped it did. I was hoping they would come back with just this stellar, seminal episode, something that would stand the test of time, and it really just felt like a place-setting type of a thing, and not really something that's really that deep or really worth going into. And I just hope that going forward, this episode can kind of hit some of those heights that Futurama has been known to before. Again, I'm not really dissing it. I do think it's worthwhile. I was just hoping for a little bit more. But what are your thoughts on it? Do you like Futurama? Did you like this episode? Are you hoping it gets better from here? Do you think the golden days are behind it? And just leave all those thoughts down below. Like, share, subscribe, do all those YouTube things. Throw me some money if you want to. But until next time,
let's go punch somebody.